In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.
So, Ryan Roxie here. Welcome to In the Trenches. And I can't think of a better guy to be in the trenches with me today. I have Phil X. Welcome.
What's up?
We've actually been talking quite a lot.
We talked on the bus. We talked at the hotel. We've been talking now, just setting up.
Phil is visiting here in Stockholm, so we've actually done a one-on-one interview. I know that most of the interviews I do on the podcast are via Skype, but you actually have us face-to-face. And we were face-to-face much earlier, taking the bus, showing him around downtown Stockholm. And now we're here at the Bandit Studios. They've been very nice enough to thank you, Peter, for loaning it out the studio. And we're here to talk about Phil X and all things Phil X.
Wow.
How about that?
I'm ready.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, you're Canadian. You're always ready.
Wow.
See, I do my research, or my research team does their research and then gives it to me.
I know, but what does Canadian have specifically to do with ready?
Well, I think the Canadians are always ready. They're always ready for, I guess, anything that, like, quick movements from the States.
I think you're right.
And there's a lot of quick movements these days happening. But you do now live in, you were telling me, Las Vegas.
Yeah, but not for long.
That's okay. But you are sort of a United States
I'm a transplant.
transplant.
Yeah. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and moved to L.A. in '97 with a dream.
Yeah, dream of being a guitar player. It seems to have worked out.
I think it worked out all right.
It has. I mean, just going over quickly some of the bands you've been associated with. I think most people nowadays, and this is what you're out here in Stockholm playing, you're playing guitar for Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
But you've also been associated with many different bands. There's some. I look at some Canadians in there.
Yeah, there's some
and
Canadians in there.
Northwest. Probably the most popular of the Canadians would be Avril Lavigne.
Yeah.
Played guitar for her.
Well, I mean, I recorded on a record for her. I guess I was a studio guy in L.A. and the way the snowball rolls, is you start on one project and then it's another project and then it's Avril Lavigne.
Yeah.
So, and in another studio, it started with Tommy Lee, Methods of Mayhem in '99, and then it was Rob Zombie, and then Alice Cooper, the Brutal Planet thing.
Yeah, I always say this to people that I think whatever gig you're at, as long as you're cool about it, it'll lead you to your next gig. People associated with that project will more than likely help you with the next project.
Yes. And sometimes it's the producer. I always put it like this. Like the whole Tommy Lee thing happened was I was actually painting the producer's garage, Scott Humphrey. And I always put it like, well, they needed a guitar player and Scott knew I played. So he said, let's get Phil in here, play some guitar.
Brush or roll on? What were you doing?
Well, brush for the corners,
okay,
and roll on for the walls.
And now masking, did you do the masking as well?
I didn't do a lot of masking.
Okay, all right.
But the obvious situation is delivering. If someone says, "Hey, can you come in and play guitar on this?" you have to deliver.
Yeah.
Like if because I played one song and Tommy was like, "Dude, you got to play on the whole record," and I'm like, "Great, awesome." But if I would have walked in and not delivered, then I would have been back to painting. And
being prepared.
They'd be still looking for somebody.
Yeah. I've actually learned your guitar parts over the years. I'll get into that a little bit later. But I wish we had some guitars here right now in the studio. I mean, all we have is a cigar box 3-string, but maybe you can even show me with that. But I've been learning your guitar solo for the Alice Cooper fans out there that are listening. Brutal Planet. That guitar solo is actually a Phil X guitar solo, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct.
And I've been playing it wrong for many, many years. And many, many DVDs.
But I didn't realize you guys split it, right? You take the first half and Nita takes the second half?
We do in this new version of it the last time we played it. You're right.
Yeah,
But
well,
maybe at
she
one
doesn't
point.
do it right either.
Well, okay, good. Well, 2 wrongs make it still wrong, I guess. But I also saw on your list of, God, the names are great. The Chris Cornell.
Oh, dude, that was amazing.
A great experience.
And I hate being the guy that, hey, we're all in the studio. Hey, can we get a photo? I hate that, but I really regret not getting a pic with Cornell.
Yeah.
Because we only did one song together, and it was like he did an entire record with Timbaland. And the record company was like, you're a rock singer. We should do a rock version of the single. And so they went to Howard Benson to produce, and at the time I was his guitar player.
Right.
Anytime he needed one. And he said, "Hey, we're doing a Chris Cornell song, you in?" I'm like, "Are you kidding?" So
unlike Donkey Kong.
Yeah, and then I was there, and then Chris came in, and we got to hang a bit, and then the next time, it was funny. The next time I saw him, I came in, and he was there talking about either doing another project or something. I'm going, "Hey, how's it going?" He goes, "Hey, we just mixed a song. I made sure they turned up the guitar solo." I'm just thinking,
thank you, Chris.
Excuse me, my language. I just heard that from Chris Cornell.
This is a podcast. You can do whatever you want.
All right. It was awesome to hear that from Chris Cornell.
That is cool.
Yeah.
He was very understated, quiet, but super cool.
Yes.
The one time that I was able to meet him, I was in a band up in Seattle called Sweetwater, and managed by the same. He was married to the manager at the time.
Okay.
And we were at a record release party, and he came up and he said, "Good job." But those two words to me, "good job," coming from Chris Cornell was...
Yeah, it's always the source, right?
It's golden, right? Yeah.
You know, you're in a club and you're playing your ass off, and then when a drunk guy walks up and goes, "Yeah, you're pretty good," it's not the same thing as if one of your heroes walks up and goes, "Wow, that was awesome."
We were just talking about that. One of your heroes being guitarist Uli Roth.
Yes.
And you just recently met your guitarist hero. And what did he say to you when you guys met?
Well, it's the funny thing is you meet in like, he doesn't know who you are, and you're like, "Oh my God, it's Uli Roth,"
and
and
guy
we
I've
were
been
in
listening
Germany
to
in
my whole
September.
life.
Yeah, everybody got something from this guy, even Eddie Van Halen. I can point out a lick at the end of the Ice Cream Man solo that he got from Sales of Chiron. That kind of thing.
Right.
So, because I totally geek out. I love Eddie, and I love Uli, and I love, there's so many players that we grew up on. But when it was by chance that Uli heard me play, and then Pete Thorne was at the same event in Mannheim, Guitar Summit, and he wanted to play Immigrant Song, and the bass player was going to sing it, and but he had lost his voice. So I'm like, "Okay, Pete, I'll sing Immigrant Song." So to a full theater, I'm holding my phone, reading the lyrics and singing Immigrant Song.
But it's sort of in your backbone.
Ingrained, but
you're Canadian.
but
you're ready.
Yes,
right?
ready.
What we said in the beginning. You're ready.
So, but it's Uli Roth backstage going, "Holy shit, this guy can sing." Right. So then we hang out for a bit and we exchange numbers, and I'm right. You're gonna call me, right? But I land. It's funny because it was a good week. I left Mannheim, Germany, to fly to the Bahamas to jam with Billy Gibbons. So that was a good week.
That's like Spicoli. You just jet on over to London and jam with the Stones. Jet on over to Bahamas and jam.
Right. But in my transition of travel, I was at Miami waiting for my luggage, and I get a text from Uli Roth saying, "Call me." So I get back to the hotel, and I call him, and I say, "Hey, what's up?" He goes, "Hey, do you want to... I'm playing some shows in Japan in January. Do you want to be a guest?" And I'm like, "Define guest." And he's like, "Well, I want you to get up and sing and play some Scorpion songs from the 70s. And I'm like, "Oh, man.
I'm in.
I'm totally in."
Yeah.
And it was from that point to January, I'm getting the odd text. Like, I'll be going throughout my day, like from throwing bananas into a shopping cart, and you get a text from Uli Roth and says, "How about singing Virgin Killer?" And I'm like, "Yeah. I'm in." You know?
For those of you keeping track at home, Uli Roth and David Lee Roth, no relation. Just so you know.
Exactly.
Right? I don't want anyone scratching their head over there. But I heard that story, it was like basically a 2-for-1 when you actually got there too, because who else did you meet when you...
Rudolph Schecker.
There you go.
So he came in, he did 2 of the 3 shows, and Rudy Lenner, who was the drummer before Herman Rarebell, so he played on In Trance and Virgin Killer. So he was there, and he played on the same songs that I played. So there was, like, I actually, if you look at my Instagram, which is PhilX1111, and you scroll down, you will see a picture of the Virgin Killer album cover, and I posted my face on Klaus Main's body.
Really bad Photoshop, or was it just...
It was on my phone, so it's crude.
Yeah, okay.
But at the same time...
Not as good as your painting skills.
I'm like, I'm playing with these guys tonight.
Yeah.
So I was really excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier before the camera started rolling about what is your favorite Scorpions album cover, and I remember just the ones with the forks in the guy's eyes. That was Blackout, right?
Yes.
But then obviously my favorite one was like the one with the bubble gum
Bubblegum
on the
boob.
Bubblegum boob.
Bubblegum boob.
Forever be known as. So
Love Drive, great record.
yeah, it is.
That was the first record after.
We have
Uli.
gone on an Uli Roth Scorpions tangent, but I want to sort of steer it a little bit back to stuff that you're doing, because all that experience, all those bands that you've been jamming with, have basically brought you up to, and it's been longer than I didn't realize it until the research guys gave me this news. You've been in John Bon Jovi for quite some time.
Well, the first swing was 2011.
Yeah, 2011.
Yeah, and it was a month. It was 13 shows.
Okay.
And
Was that all that was promised with you?
no, it was like what was promised was you might come out, you might not. They were like,
That doesn't sound like a promise. It sounds more like a flip of a coin. But you obviously did something right.
It kind of what happened was there was a couple of situations where, Richie had a hard time walking on stage or something happened, and John was like, I don't want this to be a problem, so I need to have a guy ready to go in the wings. So they found me and asked me to learn a 2.5-hour show and to be ready. Yeah. But you might come out, you might not.
I gotcha.
So, but 2011, April 14, I got a call from John, and he said, I might need you in May. I want to put you on hold, but maybe you could come to New York and rehearse a couple of days at the end of April. And the day that I flew to New York to rehearse for 2 days was the day that Richie went into rehab.
Right.
So it went from on hold to in, and your first show is the New Orleans Jazz Fest in 2 days in front of 50,000 people.
Okay. No pressure at all.
So thrown into the fire.
I love it when I hear stories like that, when people's first gig is that monumental.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other story I have a couple stories that can compare. That's pretty big. The other one for my time was I played with a guy named Gilby Clarke.
Yes.
And before we had played in a band together, we played in a band called Candy. And then I was living in New York, and he calls me on the phone. He goes, "Hey, Ryan, I'm playing New York tomorrow, or I'm actually playing Boston tonight." I'm like, I'd heard nothing. This was before the internet.
Right.
I go, "That's cool. Where are you playing, dude?" Expecting a club. He goes, "I'm playing Boston Garden tonight and Madison Square Garden tomorrow, because I'm in Guns N' Roses." And at that time, it's just like, are you kidding me? So it's funny now to think about it, that I didn't know any of that news until it was basically live and almost happening. Yeah. And today it would have gone out, like the news would have been.
Oh yeah, totally.
Already out before you were even in the band.
But that happened to me too a couple of years ago. We were playing in Rock in Rio in 2017. And there's a guy that I did a session with in LA. His name is John Button, bass player. And he goes, "Hey man, I'm in Rio. Want to hang out?" I'm like, "Sure, what are you doing in Rio?" "Oh, I'm playing, Rock in Rio." I'm like, "With who?" "The Who." I'm like, "Oh, dude. I had no idea, but that's great. Congratulations."
Good news.
Yeah.
Who again? Yeah. Wow. Well, when you talk about being the studio musician that you have been and working your way through those ranks, I always like to talk about some secret weapons that you might have, because I know that there's a lot of musicians that listen to the podcast, and up and coming guitar players. And I always try to maybe give you maybe one or two nuggets of information from guys like you. Yeah. That like what one secret would you sort of give someone, whether it's a technical thing on the guitar or whether it's a mental thing, order?
I'd say comedy. If you're funny, they call you back.
Yeah?
Gear-wise. No, actually, I think
comedy's good.
You have to think.
Because we talked about that before. You front your own band. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But and we both front our own bands as well as playing for these iconic guys.
Yeah.
And you say that you have the same sort of mentality as I do. Is the space in between the songs. it should be reserved for a bit of comedy, but then not too much. Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what's your advice for if you're fronting a band and you don't want to do the same, same old in between?
Well, I think the plan is not to have it worked out. Like sometimes I'll say something and I'll get a great reaction, and then I'll never say it again because it wasn't triggered again.
Right.
You don't want it to be like, oh, I have a great comeback, but somebody's got to tell me someone's got to trigger it. You want to have a whole bunch of those, but the more you do it, the more you're better on the fly. And the better that you are on the flyer, the more content you have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what we were talking about. Basically,
I think that's
content.
good. That actually really is good. Have enough in your arsenal of lines or one-liners or sort of things that don't sound like the typical, hey, how the F you doing out there? Or, how's everybody feeling? I don't know how I'm feeling. I'll let you know in 3 songs, something like that. But have enough of those in your back pocket so that they can come out at any given time. Well, but doesn't that come through experience?
It comes through experience, and you don't want it just be the arsenal that, the pocket that you always go into. You want to come up with new stuff all the time. And that always comes with being on a roll. Like, for me, it takes a few shows to be on a roll, and then everything that comes out is like, wow, I not only feel like I'm in an amazing band right now because we've done 4 shows and we're solid as fuck, right, but everything coming out of my mouth is just working.
Everything? No, I understand that because I've been on those rolls sometimes, and then I'll say something that I go, oh, why the fuck did I say that?
Well, there's always that moment, but then you watch on YouTube the next day and it wasn't as bad as you thought.
True, that is true.
I think YouTube is an incredible learning tool because when you watch YouTube of you the next day, you see what works, what doesn't work.
Maybe that's like professional football players and NBA players. Everybody goes, I'm going to go look at the tape. I'm going to go watch the tape. I'm going to watch the tape. YouTube is our rock and roll tape.
Yeah, it's a sports thing.
We just go, because now we have that ability to watch the show that basically not even the day after. It's basically the night of. Someone has posted up some sort of clip, and then you can actually look at the tape, review it, and say, oh, I did this pretty good, or maybe I didn't do this so well.
And the thing is, when you get to a point where you do feel good about everything that you've done, you kind of have this cockiness that is a good cockiness, not like not the one that's frowned upon. Like if somebody comes up to me after a drill show, and they go, "Hey, you guys are pretty good," I'm like, "What fucking band were you watching? We were fucking awesome." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have to
one-up them.
You have to own it like that.
Yeah. I always say it's such a fine line, confidence and arrogance.
Yeah.
And always let people respect your confidence and be part of your team instead of the arrogance where they're not on your team.
Right.
You want people to be on your team always,
exactly.
Right? So you mentioned the drills, and that is basically what we are here to talk about, is what you have going on right now, along with touring with Bon Jovi. But you're able to do your own solo band. You've had this band for quite a while.
Yes, since 2003, I think.
And you are putting out your 4th album. Or 4th release, or what is this?
It is an album in volumes. This is volume 1 that just came out May 9th. But it's one of those things because, 2013 I became a dad, and then again 2016, and we started this in 2014, and then you're on John Bon Jovi's speed dial. So with life stuff and the Bon Jovi stuff, it took 5 years for this thing to come out. But in the meantime, we got to record a lot. So, there's a different drummer on every song.
I was just going to say, do you have a consistent lineup? And if you have a different drummer on every lineup, that answers that question for drummers. But do you have a consistent bassist? Or
yes,
are you,
Daniel Spree. He's my bass player for life, my left wing. And so every time we went into the studio, we took a different drummer. But it wasn't even like...
Was that conscious, or did it just happen like, oh, okay, well, I feel this song deserves this drummer?
Well, I was still living in LA, and it was like, hey, I want to record the record in July. And my drummer's like, oh, wow, I just got the Voice tour. When you have a good drummer in LA, they play in 10 bands.
They're working.
And you're like, okay, so, hey, I got a gig on Friday. Yeah, I can't do it. And then you go to B guy. I got a gig on Friday. I can't do it. You go to C guy. So all these drummers, right? But at the same time, being a session guy, I had played with some of the best drummers in the world. And you form a camaraderie with all these individuals. And then when you're like, I'm going to record a record, I'm going to call up all my buddies and see who wants to play on the record. And they all said yes. Plus, there was a few people that I hadn't worked with before.
Well, the good news is you're only halfway through the alphabet at this point. You know, a little over halfway up. You have 14 drummers on that, so you have plenty more music to come out.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this new record and what someone should expect or not expect as a difference between, okay, this is Phil X playing with his own band, The Drills, and this is who I go to see, Phil X, when he plays in Bon Jovi. What's the difference between the two?
The difference is I can't go full Phil X in Bon Jovi because I'm kind of, John's driving, I'm in the back seat. And full Phil X is a little too wacky for Bon Jovi. a little too
You're
quirky.
Phil half X.
Yeah, I'm Phil.
Phil 3/4 X. I don't know.
Half an X is like a V, the top of it.
Then it becomes there's way too much algebra involved at that point.
Yeah, it's math.
So when people come to see The Drills,
I always say if you're looking at a map and you got Phil, say you have Richie on one side and you have me on the other side, there's a guy that shows up in the middle who is yet to be named, and he delivers every night with Bon Jovi. Now, when I do The Drills, they're my songs, my lyrics, my riffs, my stupid riffs that I choose to write and then sing on top of at the same time. That's doing math.
Yeah.
That's like calculus.
Do you find yourself, when you write your songs, that you're the best person possible to sing those lyrics and those melodies over it?
That's a good question. I believe I am. I it's because I write for my voice. I write for how I play guitar. And the lyrics that I write, I'm very tongue-in-cheek, very open to interpretation. Those are the kind of lyrics that I like. When people say, hey, what did you mean by that line? I go, what did you think? Because I'd like to hear somebody else's view, because that's why music's amazing. Music is
Open
I think
to
music
interpretation.
exactly. And I think reading between the lines is really understanding your artist, the artist that you like.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case with some people don't want to sing the lyrics that I've written because sometimes they're goofy, but at the same time when you dig into the goofy, there's more of a message.
Yeah.
Like one of the examples I use, we have a song called Kiss My Troublemaker. And, a lot of people would take that as a sexual innuendo.
Yeah.
And for me, as you read into the lyrics, it's about taking chances in life.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, I'm the last one to say anything. I have a song called Smell My Finger, and that's pretty literal. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as what I can get, is that I know that you really are a big Eddie Van Halen fan, as I am.
Yeah.
We grew up on those early Van Halen records. So I got a bit of the guitar influence. But when you're talking about these vocal influence, lyrical influence, do you have any sort of bands or vocalists, lyricists that you have said, oh, this is the guy?
Well, not really when I wrote for The Drills, because I totally believe everything's been said. So you have to kind of try to say the same things in a different way. So we have songs like Air Hockey Champion of the World. We have songs like I Wish My Beer Was As Cold As Your Heart. Those would never be Van Halen songs. Those would never be Led Zeppelin songs. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
The Drills.
It's The Drills. So I, some of these songs, like I wrote, like when we could get Matt Chamberlain, who's an amazing drummer,
Absolutely,
in the studio to come in, and I wrote a song specifically with him in mind from when we worked on somebody else's record.
Matt Chamberlain is the Soundgarden, right?
He did the last Soundgarden tour, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he, he's an incredible musician and an incredible expressionist when it comes to drums. So he played on the opening track, Something to Say, and it's a very incredible drum track. And then going back to Van Halen, because it's like 40 years since Van Halen won, I I decided to tip my hat to Van Halen 1 with a song that's kind of like I'm the One-ish. And Glenn Sobel, your teammate's on that track.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that
Glenn Sobel's a machine.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's incredible too.
Well, with all these drummers to choose from, you do have, your bass player for life, as you mentioned. But when you do this live, how are you going to choose which drummer to tour with, and who will you tour with?
No, it's the guy who does the job.
Yeah.
The guy who's available. The guy who does it. Like, for instance, it was Brent Fitz has been doing a lot of gigs with us, and he's out with Slash, so he couldn't do our 4 promo shows. And Dan had been playing with Mike Dubkey, with another artist named Mark Zavon in LA, and he's like, well, if nobody can do it, let's get Dubkey. And I'm like, okay. So Mike came in and learned our 90-minute set, and it was fun. He did great.
This podcast is great because we've dropped so many names that we're going to have so many tags on the actual description of the podcast that
It's
if
all
every
about
single,
tags.
well, I'm telling you, if everybody that's been mentioned in this podcast just tells 2 friends, this will go viral at this
Right.
point, especially if you start getting into the point of, Slash featuring Miles Kennedy,
And his conspirators.
co-starring The Conspirators, sponsored
Right.
by Coca-Cola. I was waiting for how many bands we can fit under, how many sort of
Right.
names we can just keep extending it.
And then the lineup thing went a little further, as I had recorded a couple of projects with Abe Laboriel Jr., Paul McCartney's drummer.
Of course.
And he's not only an incredible drummer, feel, groove guy, but he's such an amazing person. And so when you hit it off and you want to make some music and you bring him into the studio, like I from my YouTube demographic regarding guitar demos and stuff, I always had people who were like, hey, how come why don't you record a blues tune? And I'm like generally not a blue guy, so I'm not into that much blues, but I could go down the Zeppelin blues vibe.
Absolutely.
So I got Abe to play on this song, and I opened it up with me and my guitar singing, and then I go, it'd be a good song for a guest vocalist.
You got a good range, though, your style of range, because I think part of that whole studio musician being hired as a producer, he's my guy.
Yeah.
You did have to learn a bunch of different styles. Maybe you didn't master blues, but you could definitely play some.
You become a chameleon, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, I wanted my licks to be different. So it's not like you hear a lot of blues players and they're just regurgitating all the same blues licks. And I got a little a couple of Greek bouzouki things going on. I have a couple of Indianish droney things going on in the solo. I wanted it to be different. And just to take it to another level, I got Doug Pinnick from King's X to come in and sing.
You just keep dropping
verses.
these names that are just like monumental guys and really influential players. It's cool to have that association. That pretty much is. You are the definition of in the trenches of rock and roll because you have worked with so many of these talented musicians. And a lot of people think as you've recorded on so many different tracks, you haven't jammed like face to face with a lot of them because when you come into the studio, a lot of times the track is already done and you're just playing guitar over them.
Yeah.
But is there any live guys that like because you've mentioned so many big names so far? Is there any live guys that you'd say, "Wow, I jammed with him and that was special"?
I mean, everybody was special. I mean, and like I said, I had worked with these guys in the studio before. So Dan, my left wing bass player,
Bass player for life.
He hadn't worked with these guys before. So one day he's in the studio with Taylor Hawkins, and then
Taylor Hawkins, drummer of
Foo Fighters, and then the next, and being a huge Motley Crue fan, now we're in the studio with Tommy Lee, and because Tommy's on Volume 2, and me, I'd already worked on all of Tommy's solo records. So, and I actually did some shows, some TV shows with him when Tommyland came out. So it's just hanging out with a buddy. But Dan's in there going, "Oh my God, I'm playing bass and Tommy Lee's playing drums. This is crazy." And then he told me the next day. He comes in, he goes, "I got to tell you, that was pretty surreal."
He stayed composed.
He stayed composed.
Yeah. I've pretty much been able to stay composed pretty much with most of my heroes that I've met or played guitar with, but one guy I lost it a little bit, I think, was Brian May. When he played my guitar at a jam. And it was like, awesome. I took off my guitar and gave it to him, and Brian played it. And I went, oh my God, Brian May's played my guitar. Yeah. I'll never wash that guitar again. But are there any guys that you have that, you haven't been able to keep your composure? Like, have you met Eddie?
I've met Eddie a couple of times. And that's one of those things where, I mean, he meets so many people, like, I doubt he remembers. Yeah. But it's nice to get an endorsement. So when I met Eddie, like the third time, Ross Hogarth, who had produced, he had mixed the last Van Halen record.
Right.
He called me over at the Roxie, and he said, hey, Ed, this is my buddy Phil X. When he moved to L.A., he slept on my couch, and now he plays on guitar on everybody's records. So it was kind of nice,
That's the perfect endorsement.
Yeah. So when when I shook my hand, I got that Eddie Van Halen smile, and then I put my hand in my pocket, and nobody else shook it the rest of the night.
That's funny, man. Now I can only think that Phil X came as an abbreviation of your really super long Greek name.
Yeah, Exenides.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right. So mine, I kind of tell people that it's abbreviation of my Polish name, even though my wife always says, it is not. It is definitely not, Ryan. You just, but I started calling myself Ryan Roxie when I was in 5th grade, 6th grade.
Really?
I was really young because I didn't really have a backup plan even back then.
Wow.
I just, going to do it. So when did you start calling yourself Phil X?
I think I was like 19 or 20.
Okay.
I was playing Frozen Ghost, the Canadian band.
Yes.
And that was the first big record that I played on. And they're like, you really want to go with Phil Exenides for the guitar spot? And I'm like, I'm thinking about that. I think I want to go with Phil X. And they're like, well, that's cool. Let's do that. But then you have...
you don't want to be confused with Madam X at that time.
Or Malcolm, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those, Madam X, which is where the record, we didn't even talk about that. The record is called Stupid Good Lookings, which is from Madam X from the Flintstones.
Oh, wow. There's no tattoos of that on you, is there?
No, that's because it's brand new. But it's one of those things where even now when people when I did the Dachi record, which was a staple record for me in 2005. No, 2006, I did all the guitars on the first Dachi record, and it became a calling card. Like, everybody was like, get that guy who did the Dachi record. And then one guy was like, hi, I'm contacting about working on a record, and does this Phil X guy actually exist? Is that a real name? And I'm like, what do you think? It's the coffee guy? He's playing guitars on
the legend of Phil X.
So it was kind of funny. But wait, I wanna go back to one more thing about a hero. Because before Steve Lukather became a pal, he came to see the drills at the Roxie years ago. And it was, and you're playing and you're looking in the audience and you see Steve Lukather and you're like, holy fuck, it's Steve Lukather.
Yeah.
Right? And then
Toto.
I know. Some of your favorite solos of your life.
Absolutely. Or my favorite, one of my favorite chord progression. Hold the Line to me to this day. Simplest chord progression, but so effective. It's the same chord progression back. So what did he say?
Well, no, the first thing is not only is he standing in front of me, but he gets closer when I play a solo. So I'm like, okay, dude, you're freaking me out. But then we find, I'd known Trevor, his son, for years, because he used to sneak into the Cat Club to see the drills with the fake ID.
At the Cat Club, and this is how it comes full circle, because I used to play with the Cat Club and with the Starfuckers, and you would open up the show.
Right.
But that was before we were kind of bros.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a small world. It all leads to good places.
It does. It does.
And then when we finally were talking outside, he literally took a Phil X lick in his memory and said, hey, you did this one lick where your hand was going one way, but it sounded like it was going the other way. And I'm like, you're fucking Steve Lukather. What?
You show me. Yeah.
So it was pretty amazing. And then we became pals after that. And then he just explained to me what he actually liked about me, which was really amazing. Like he liked my recklessness and he was at the time he was like, you know, I feel like I've lost my recklessness, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about you. I saw you at the baked potato last week. You're fucking reckless.
You are definitely reckless.
amazing.
Yeah, I think what he might have lost his reckless, he had made up for in recklessness over 2 decades at least.
But his playing is just so still like and I think he took it to heart when I said, "Look, I saw you play at the baked potato, and it made me go home and practice."
He played on from the that's the one good thing about playing with Alice Cooper, is that because you might not get in the John Bon Jovi band because John Bon Jovi had Richie for so many years, so you're learning a lot of Richie's parts. But Alice, with all his different lineups and all his iconic lineups, was Hunter Wagner or it's the original lineup, or Steve Lukather played on the From the Inside album. So I've been able to learn his parts as well. And which all comes full circle. I've learned your parts on Brutal Planet when you did that album. So, I mean, maybe that is what differentiates ourselves. But and don't take this as a diss at all, because I think it's a huge compliment. I am looking at you now as a drummer's guitar player, in the sense of, you know how drummers always go out to lunch and hang out and are bros and buds? Guitar players aren't usually like that. Guitar players usually have that little they're kind of looking under their glasses, or kind of going, what lick is that? I want to learn that lick.
Right.
But you have a way of making people want to be on your team, and you are a good hang. Like, I want to go out to lunch, which we're probably going to go out to lunch right after we finish this, and I'm actually considering having like guitar luncheons, like the way drummers do every single week.
Right.
So if we can ever organize it that you're in town again, we can actually go out to lunch, or when we meet up somewhere on the road sometime in 2019, our paths will cross. But
probably,
But this is like, it's a compliment, because I don't think of every guitar player being as sort of open and friendly and, I don't know, positive.
Well, thank you.
It's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. I grew up. I think we all grew up in guitar circles, and then everybody that went to this high school and everybody went to another high school, and say you got the hot shot of each high school, right? And they're content being the hot shot at high school. I was never content. I just busted my ass and busted my ass and busted my ass. So when all the hot shots got together, they were like, "What's that? And what's that? And what are you doing there? And oh my God, where'd you get that picking?" And I go, "Well, I'm not afraid to say I've been taking bouzouki lessons,
right?
Because
that's from your Greek background. That's from your dad, right?
Bouzouki, yeah. My dad played bouzouki. I don't play as good as I did, but it definitely gave me an articulation that was not evident in all the other hot shots. Like, it just added this thing, because there's no room for error. There's no distortion. You're not cranking through a Marshall. It's a paired string instrument, like a 12 string, but 8, and you're shredding on it into a clean amp. So if you're sloppy,
so you could actually
sloppy.
play that cigar 4-string thing. I'll bet you could totally riff on it.
Probably could do something on it.
Well, which leads me to, like, probably we'll round it up as far as equipment, because I know that there's some people listening out there that really want to hear about the equipment aspect of stuff. And I know that you've been working closely with some companies over the years. Yeah. What's your go-to guitar company or go-to amp company? And does it differentiate from Bon Jovi or your solo stuff with the drills?
Well, Framus is a company I've been with since 2014. And they basically built my dream guitar. Like, I love a P90 in a slab of mahogany, and I love the SG shape, but I'm a bigger guy, so it seems like a toy sometimes. It's a little thin, so they went a little fatter with like an SG type shape, made it a little more asymmetrical, so it wasn't a complete knockoff.
Right.
And I love a fat neck, which is 58 style, a little wider at the nut for the D.
Gibson 58 style baseball bat neck, sort of big,
but
feel.
a little wider at the nut, so my fingers don't feel cramped when I play a D chord. But when someone's making you a guitar and you're going, I wish my fingers weren't cramped when I played a D chord, and they'll go. They made my dream guitar in a couple of days when I was at the factory, actually.
And so you've been with them since 2014.
Yes.
How do you get around the hum of the single coil P90?
Which is a really good question, and one asked a lot. It's a weird animal to tame. I usually don't have a problem because I don't use that much gain. If people are like, man, I got 2 overdrives on and my Marshall's cranked and I can't get rid of I'm like, you're not gonna get rid of it.
It's just gonna happen.
Yeah. So I love setting my amps on around in the vicinity of Malcolm Young. Mm-hmm. And with this overdrive, I can do like
just moving air, that Malcolm Young sort of moving air tone.
Not very distorted, but rock and roll.
Right.
And then with I get with one pedal, if we're doing a country tune and I got a lower output pickup, I put on this overdrive and I get the country solo to sing, and it's awesome. But when we do Raise Your Hands or You Give Love a Bad Name, I got this pedal on. So and I fluctuate. Like I did do a custom signature pedal with a company in Italy called LAA Custom, but we're still kind of tweaking it, right? Because the prototype was on my Bon Jovi board, and then I had to send it back to him to like do.
Bon Jovi board's different from your club rig, your drills board.
Well, because I don't when I'm singing, I don't want a lot of stuff at my feet. You know what I mean? So I have a tuner, 2 different overdrives, exactly, and I use an AB box because I always run 2 amps, a big amp and a little amp. My big amp is the Friedman X Signature, and I've been loving the stuff that Supro's been putting out lately. So they have a little Supro 1606, an it's 5 watts with an 8-inch speaker, and then there's another company called Greer, and they make a little 3-watt amp.
All right.
And I run that into the Supro 8-inch speaker. So the last swing that I did with the drills, it was the Friedman into a 412, and then this little amp on top. And every sound guy's like, "Wow, that big amp sounds amazing. What are you doing with the little one?" And I go, and then I play it by itself, and then it's like, "Yeah, no big deal." But then you blend the 2 together.
That's your sound.
And it's like every sound guy goes, "Holy shit." Because I feel like a 412 cabinet is kind of missing a specific mid-range. And
you found it with this
little amps fill the gap.
Well, I'll put the links to those companies all in the description. It's going to be the longest description. It's going to have to go behind all the names that we've dropped first, and then the company and then the descriptions.
Yeah.
Well, tell me one last time about the Drill's newest record. Where can we all listen to it? Where can people find it? And what's the best way to get in touch with you?
It's Phil X and the Drills. Stupid Good Lookings. It's on iTunes. It's on Amazon. It's on all the stores. It's on Spotify. And there will be, if you follow me on Twitter, which is The Real Phil X, or PhilX1111 on Instagram, I'll be announcing a retail store where some of the merch from the 4 promo shows is, and the CD. And it's funny because I had a Japanese fan come to the drill shows in California,
right?
And she also helps out my Phil X fan club, and Stefania is in Italy, and they all form this group of Phil X fans, and they post stuff that I don't even know where they get. I don't know how they get it before I even walk off the stage. There's a video.
God bless them. God bless them for that.
It's an incredible situation to have and to be in. And Mamiko, she came from Japan, and she goes, "I should take some CDs to Stefania so she can sell them on the Bon Jovi tour." And I gave her 100 CDs. And in Russia, our first city, she goes, Stefania's like, "Here's the money for the CDs. I sold them all."
Wow.
And I'm like,
maybe she should just be your label. I'm on Stefania Records.
Maybe that's it, man.
Stefania Records?
Maybe that's it.
I want to get signed to Stefania. No, I love the fact that you seem to have a very close relationship with your fans as well. And like I say, hopefully this podcast and being in the trenches will actually give some of the people that listen to me, turn you on to Phil X, and then vice versa, and we find out about each other's worlds, because that's, one hand washes the other, both hands wash the feet. Isn't that what they say? Some old saying. My old roommate used to say that, and he literally while
Where
washing
the
his
hell
feet.
is he from? I never heard that before.
He's Italian, but he actually lives in Greece now.
Wow.
How about that?
Yep.
That is shout out to Weeds. So anyhow, I really appreciate you being down here in the trenches with me,
Thanks for having
and
me, man.
it's been a great talk. I will look forward to seeing you in the future, not just with Bon Jovi, but I'm going to make it out to a Drills show at one point, and who knows when we team up together and Ryan Roxie and the Drills do some sort of tour. I mean,
That would
you
be
have
fantastic.
what was the song? Air Hockey,
Air hockey champion of the world.
and I have a song called Ping Pong Heroes.
Get
So
out!
what?
It's
I have a song
perfect.
called Smell My Finger. You have a song called
Kiss My Trouble
There you
Maker.
go.
Oh my God.
Who put my
That's like a
peanut
tour
butter in
made-
your chocolate?
That's like a...
But it's been great having you on, Phil X. Everybody go check out Phil X and the Drills, and of course a Bon Jovi concert near you. Thanks for listening to this week's podcast of In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie. Any parting words, my friend?
This has been great, man. Thank you.
It's been really awesome. Now you only have like 10 more interviews to go and you're done. Thanks again, Phil. Cheers.
See you, buddy.
Have a good one.
You too.
In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.